Hi there, my name is Ethan Mills, and this is for my final project of preaching in the contemporary world. Now, when we talk about the contemporary world, there are a lot of things that people want to talk about. We call them hot button topics or, issues of contention. And a lot of times, preachers, pastors, ministers tend to shy away from certain subjects just because maybe they don't want to rile up feathers. Maybe they don't know what to say. But I want to take a few minutes to talk to you today about 7 topics we should not be avoiding as pastors. First one is politics. Now I know politics holds with it a lot of contention, but there's a reason and a way we should talk about politics, and that's this: we should preach Scripture. At no point should we use our platform, should we use Scripture, should we use the pulpit for secular partisanship. It's not about picking a side of an aisle. It's not about telling people who they should vote for, but it's talking about Scripture in our lives. We should not avoid it. It's critical in our behaviors, it's critical in our choices, and we need to know what Scripture says about it. The second thing is giving. Now, I know some churches have no problem talking about giving, but a lot of times people shy away because they don't just want to feel like money grubbers or they owe us something or they don't want to talk about tithe again. But when we talk about giving, it's not so much about missions and tithing and we need this for a building project or something. It's about preaching stewardship, about preaching using what God has given you for the kingdom in whatever way. We shouldn't shy away from giving. We should be generous people. But how are they to know how to be generous if we don't preach what God's stewardship looks like? The third thing is sex. Now, growing up in high school for myself, I was in the midst of the purity culture revival, and now we've kind of shied away from talking about it at all. If we don't talk about it, culture is going to guide the next generation. As a student pastor, this is really critical for me. And so, why do we need to talk about sex? Well, it's because we need the godly perspective. What does God say about it? Not what is an opinion, not what do I have to say, not what does culture have to say. What does God have to say? Why is it sacred? Why is it important? Why are all of these things important concepts when it comes to sex, marriage, and relationships? We should be people helping set that standard, not culture. The fourth one is hell. Now, when we talk about hell, I don't know about you, my mind immediately goes to sinners in the hands of an angry God, hellfire and brimstone. And so people tend to stay away from that because they don't want to shame or guilt trip people into relationship with Christ just as a get out of jail free card to escape hell. However, we can't ignore the urgency that is hell. In eternity, it's the two options. It's, are you spending an eternity with God or are you not? And if we believe that, if we truly honestly believe that, there should be an urgency for us to preach hell, not to condemn them and throw them in face first and make them feel so bad, but help them understand the reality of what the sacrifice of Jesus Christ saves us from in eternity. We need to be able to preach hell. The fifth thing is abortion. Now, when we talk about abortion, that's a hot button issue. A lot of times it's tied to politics and rights and all of that. However, when we talk about this, we need to preach something of the sanctity of life. There is importance in life. God has created us all for a unique purpose. There is life, there is purpose in that life of the child. But on top of that, we have to be willing and understand to preach restoration and reconciliation. There are people who feel pushed away from Christ because maybe they've had an abortion. And we can't just point fingers. God is a God of restoration, of helping people come to terms with and understanding things. He is not the author of confusion. So we need to preach the sanctity of life as well as restoration when we preach on abortion or talk about it. The sixth one is the biggest one right now in our culture, and that is race. How do we teach race? How do we talk about it? What do we look at it? And it's rather simple. God has value for all people. It does not matter the color of your skin, the ethnicity of your culture, where you were born. Across the board, God sees and loves all people. There is no division. He made people that look like me for his purpose, and he made people that don't look like me for his purpose. And I don't get to decide that. You don't get to decide that. If we're talking about sanctity of life, that goes over into race as well. That God sees value and purpose in all, and there is no division, and there is no lesser than or greater than. We are all his creation. And the last one is sin. Whenever we encounter it, we address it. We preach the cross. We preach Christ crucified for the sanctification of his people and salvation. So we need to be able to preach sin, not just talk about it, but confront it as Jesus did. These are just some things that we need to not shy away from the pulpit, but rather take the scriptural basis of what God thinks and preach it in this contemporary world. Thank you.